A curse is in the air tonight. A feral musk hangs heavy, mingling with the scent of wood smoke and the crisp bite of fear. The village huddles behind shuttered windows and barred doors. Even the dogs have stopped their ceaseless barking. This silence, this unnatural quiet, that's the worst part. Worse than the mournful howl that rises with the fat blood-red moon. They call it the moon beast. I don't like the name. Makes it sound like something out of a child's tale. Something not entirely real. But it is real. More real than anyone outside our little village would ever believe. We know because we see it sometimes. A hulking silhouette, black against the bloated moon, disappearing like a wraith into the forest. We know, too, what comes after. The blood smeared across a doorstep, the screams that tear through the night, the hastily dug grave the next morning. I've lived with this curse my whole life. Every full moon, the dread settles like a shroud. Mother used to bolt the doors, herd my sister and me under the bed until dawn. Her face would be tight, lips pursed in a silent prayer to whatever god she thought might listen. Now I spend those nights pacing the floor, every creak of the floorboards setting my teeth on edge. Everyone's got their theories, of course, but the only thing certain is the cycle. The full moon, the beast, the blood. Old Magda swears it's a pact made in the village's founding days, a deal with dark spirits to ensure the land's fertility. She rambles on about broken promises and unpaid debts. I say she's crazed with too much of her foul-smelling brews. And besides, what good is fertile land when you can't enjoy it after sundown on a full moon? But tonight feels different. My footsteps land heavy on the worn floorboards, and there's a prickle at the back of my neck that's been building these last few weeks. A sense of urgency. Desperation, even. It's a madness, this restlessness. The sane thing is to huddle with the rest of the villagers, to count down the hours till this moon fades. But every howl that splits the night sharpens the conviction in my gut. I can't hide anymore. In the corner, half hidden by shadows, rests my father's old hunting rifle. The wooden stock gleams dully. It's been years since I last held it. Even longer since I truly believed it might offer any sort of protection against what stalks us. But tonight, I sling the aged leather strap over my shoulder. Tonight, I break the pattern. Tonight, I don't hide. The rifle feels heavy, but strangely comforting in my hand. It's a weapon of a different world, and yet it represents my only chance against the unknown. Outside, the moon casts long, distorted shadows across the cobbled street. The wind sighs through the skeletal trees, rustling their dry leaves, a mournful echo of the dread coiling in my gut. This place, this village of barred windows and bolted doors, is my home. But it has become a cage. My name is Ari, and tonight, I become the hunter. The weight of the rifle settles against my back as I slip through the shadows. Every crackle of leaves beneath my worn boots sounds like a gunshot. The once familiar village feels alien now, a labyrinth of haunted spaces and hidden corners. The path towards the forest winds through overgrown fields bathed in the spectral moonlight. This land, normally bursting with life, feels eerily empty. The air hangs still and heavy, pregnant with the unseen. I've never hunted before, never really needed to, but the feel of my father's rifle anchors me, inherited knowledge guiding my movements. I finger the trigger guard, its worn coolness against my skin somehow comforting. Not a weapon of protection, perhaps, but defiance nonetheless. As the trees begin to press closer, a tremor runs through me. Fear threads through my determination, a cold whisper that promises safety in retreat. Back to the village, to the familiar terror. Here, there be monsters, the shadows seem to warn. Logic tells me it's the unknown that fills me with dread, the threat of the unseen. That the true beast is the curse itself, the weight of history hanging around our necks. Yet, it's hard to separate the two. With each rustle in the undergrowth, with each snap of a dry branch, I imagine claws, fangs, eyes glowing in the dark. Up ahead there's a break in the trees. An old watchtower, crumbling and moss-covered, juts into the night sky. I'd forgotten about it. A testament to a time before our curse, before the village turned inward, sealing itself away. With a jolt, I realized this is where the beast often disappears. Not just into the forest, but this specific place. Magda's ramblings about broken pacts and old promises suddenly don't sound so crazy. I approach with a caution I didn't know I possessed. The stones are slick with dew and old vines cling to them like skeletal fingers. A jagged crack runs up one side of the tower, offering just enough handholds to make it climbable. Perhaps another time I'd have hesitated, but tonight that gnawing sense of purpose propels me upwards. The climb is clumsy. My fingers, unaccustomed to such exertion, ache, but my resolve is fueled by a desperate mix of terror and fascination. The higher I climb, the more the forest is laid bare below. Under the cold moon, the canopy becomes a churning sea of silver and shadows. Reaching the top, I gasp for air. It's rudimentary, nothing more than a flat, circular rooftop. Yet there's an odd energy here. The buzz beneath my skin intensifies. There's something etched onto the weathered stones. A crude symbol, barely visible except when the moonlight hits it just right. A circle split down the middle by a jagged line. I kneel down and trace the rough etchings with my fingers. My heart thuds a frantic rhythm in my ears. This is it, a shard of proof that there's more to our curse than just a phantom beast. There's a pattern, a history, a way to break free. As I withdraw my hand, the tower groans beneath me. A shower of pebbles rains down and I lose my balance with a yelp. Tumbling, I land hard on my side, the rifle sliding from my grip. Dazed, I lift my head just in time to see a shadow detach itself from the tower's edge. Larger than any man, it drops onto the forest floor with a sound that's more of a muffled thud than a landing. And then the beast turns and stares up at me. Time fractures. Each heartbeat seems to stretch out into an eternity as my eyes lock with the beast's. They burn like twin embers in the darkness, filled with a hunger that seems both alien and agonizingly familiar. I scramble for the rifle. It lays out of reach, agonizingly close yet impossibly distant. My fingers close around empty air, the rough ground scraping my palms. Panic sets in, a wildfire in my chest. The beast crouches. Muscles ripple beneath its matted fur, not those of a wolf, but something twisted. The hind legs are too long, the snout too distorted. An abomination made flesh, a patchwork of nightmares. It inhales, a deep rumbling sound, and I get a whiff of the same feral scent that hangs over the village after a night of terror. Blood and musk and something darker, a corruption of the natural order. Then it springs. The tower groans in protest as the sheer force of the leap cracks the old stone. My mind blanks. There's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide on this exposed rooftop. I expect fangs tearing through me, a final searing agony mirrored in the beast's eyes. But the impact never comes. My eyes snap open, the creature is frozen mid-flight, suspended mere feet below me, its claws rake empty air, yellowed fangs bared in a silent snarl. But it doesn't fall. A gentle light surrounds it, like a thin glass bubble. The symbol on the tower floor glows, mirroring itself in this unearthly barrier. Something's holding it back, some invisible force woven into the very stones under my feet. The beast thrashes, each impact against the barrier sending ripples across its surface. For a wild, exhilarating second, hope sparks through me. The symbol, the tower, they hold a power, a defiance against the creature. Yet even as I watch, spiderweb cracks begin to appear across the barrier, deepening under the strain of the beast's struggles. I can't stay here. There's no winning this fight, not alone, not with a broken hunting rifle. My gaze shifts down towards the forest floor. It's a long way down, and the climb was treacherous even in daylight. Yet it's the only chance I have. Stealing my resolve, I roll to the tower's edge. The beast roars in frustration, a gut-wrenching sound that makes my eardrums ache. Its eyes follow me, burning with a desperate, cornered fury. The barrier cracks, deepening with alarming speed. Scrabbling for purchase, I lower myself over the side, searching desperately for those tenuous handholds. The stones are cold and unforgiving, offering little resistance. The drop seems to stretch endlessly below. The forest a dark maw, waiting to swallow me up. Just as I fear my grip is about to fail, my boot connects with a sturdy vine. Frantically, I lower myself further, the rough bark scraping my hands. The barrier shatters. It bursts not with a bang, but an implosion. The beast erupts from it, a whirlwind of fur and rage. My heart pounds in my chest. Faster! Faster! The gnarled roots of trees whip past me. With a final lurch, I drop the last few feet, landing with a jarring thump that jolts through my bones. Without a second to spare, I scramble into the undergrowth, the sting of nettle cuts and the sharp snap of branches my only guides. The beast's roar thunders behind me, and I dare not look back. My lungs burn, each ragged gasp tearing at my throat. I run blindly, branches whipping at my face, thorns raking my skin. The beast's snarls echo through the forest, a terrible metronome counting down some unseen time limit. The trees are a suffocating blur, the ground beneath my feet treacherous. I stumble over exposed roots, my boots tearing through muddy patches. The fear propels me, but something else does too. The memory of the beast imprisoned on the tower's roof, the strange power held within those weathered stones. There's a plan forming on the edges of my panic. Not a conscious strategy, more like an instinct, a gut feeling that draws me deeper into the tangled depths of the woods. A fallen log looms ahead. I leap, landing on its mossy surface with barely controlled momentum. It offers a brief vantage point. Glancing back, I get a flash of the creature. Even in the gloom, the hulking shape is unmistakable. Its eyes, those glowing embers, slice through the darkness, fixed upon me. It's gaining. Even as I watch, it bursts through the undergrowth, massive paws tearing through the earth. A surge of adrenaline fuels me. I launch off the log, back into the claustrophobic heart of the forest. But I'm not running aimlessly now. There's a slight hint of recognition in these woods, a half-remembered path I might have trod as a child. Ahead, I hear it, the rush of water, the faintest glimmer of hope in this nightmarish chase. A surge of desperation pushes me harder. Thorns tear at my clothes, snagging my skin. Pain becomes irrelevant, consumed by the all-consuming need to outpace the horror crashing through the undergrowth behind me. The trees give way to a steep bank leading down to the river. It's wider here, faster flowing due to the recent rains. The far side reflects silver in the moonlight, the promise of an escape route if I can just manage to reach it. Roots provide a rough staircase, but my descent is clumsy, driven more by terror than skill. I hit the riverbank with a jarring impact that sends shocks up my legs. Cold water splashes over my boots as I fight for purchase on the slick ground. Behind me, the beast bursts from the tree line. It hesitates only a second, eyes locked on me, before launching itself down the bank with terrifying speed. Its claws gouge the earth, sending showers of mud and stones raining down. There's no time to search for a shallow crossing. I plunge into the river, the icy water a brutal shock. The current is surprisingly strong, almost yanking me from my feet. The memory of my father's words about this stretch of river flashes back to me. Treacherous currents, that one. Take a man downstream faster than you can blink. That was meant as a warning, but now it's my salvation. I give myself to the flow, turning my body with the current. Gasping for breath, I risk a glance over my shoulder. The beast is on the other bank, roaring in frustration. Its hulking form paces back and forth, unable to cross the rushing water. For now, I'm safe. The river has bought me time. But time for what? My muscles ache, protesting the exertion. Hypothermia sets in, its icy fingers creeping along my limbs. I'm not going to last long in this water. Ahead, the river curves. I let the pull take me, scanning the shore desperately for a handhold, some way to break free from the unrelenting grip of the current. A low-hanging branch whips past, tantalizingly close. With a final surge of desperate energy, I lunge for it, my numbed fingers barely grasping the rough bark. With a strength I don't know I possess, I pull myself to shore, collapsing in a shivering heap on the muddy bank. From somewhere, the beast roars again, echoing through the night. I'm battered, bruised, and on the edge of giving up. But a fire still smoulders within me. That same stubborn defiance that drove me into the forest earlier is still alight, though muted by exhaustion. It's enough to push me upright, enough to force me to keep moving. My feet squelch in my waterlogged boots with each step. The cold is a constant gnawing ache, each ragged breath burning my lungs. Yet, a strange resolve cuts through the weariness. I survived the beast. I survived the river. Ahead of me, the forest thins, giving way to a familiar sight. The old mill. Even under the fat moon, it's a sorry silhouette. Roof half caved in, water wheel long rotted away. A place of forgotten dreams and abandoned hopes. But as I stumble closer, another memory surfaces. Stories whispered amongst the village children. Tales of the miller who was more than a miller. Rumours of an old magic, older than the village itself, said to still linger in those crumbling stones. It may be the chill fogging my mind, making me clutch at straws of folklore. But in this moonlit night, when a beast stalks the woods and ancient carvings hold power, it seems only fitting that tales of old magic become intertwined with my path. The mill door hangs askew, the rusted handle loose beneath my trembling hand. Inside, it's darkness and dust. Moonlight pierces the gaps in the ceiling, throwing warped shapes on the ruined floorboards. I cross over the threshold, and the air shifts. There's a prickling sensation on my skin, a low hum that resonates in my bones. My eyes fall on a workbench, surprisingly free of debris. There, half obscured by layers of sawdust, are vials of coloured liquids, bundles of dried herbs, and a thick, leather-bound book. Moonlight reflects off the silver clasps, securing it shut, an echo of the symbol on the tower. The miller was no ordinary man. The proof is laid out before me, begging for rediscovery. Time has blurred into an endless now, punctuated only by the beast's distant howls. With shaking hands, I open the book. The pages feel brittle beneath my fingers, covered in tight, slanting script. The language is unfamiliar, but the drawings are as clear as daylight. Circles, spirals, configurations of stars. And there again the split circle from the tower, the symbol that held the beast at bay. I don't need to understand the words to know what this is. It is a defense, a knowledge passed down against the very curse that plagues us, and in my frozen, waterlogged state I see it as more. It's a torch against the darkness. It's my weapon. The night stretches on. My mind grapples with archaic glyphs, struggling to connect them to the reality that waits beyond these walls. It's slow, tortuous, and my body trembles with a chill that has nothing to do with the night air. I fumble, making notes in the margins, scribbling observations with a half-broken charcoal stick I find beside a cracked ceramic bowl. When dawn begins to tint the sky with the pale promise of light, I have a plan. Crude, hastily formed and probably dangerous, but it's all I have left. As the first golden rays break the horizon, the beast's howls fade into silence. It's retreating, sensing the shift in the balance of the night. But I won't retreat. I won't hide. Not anymore. The book is tucked securely into my bag. The old workbench is strewn with half-finished concoctions, their acrid scents mixing with the dawn's chill. Stepping back into the morning light, I look towards the forest, not in fear, but with a strange, stark hunger for action. The miller's secrets simmer in my blood. The village stirs faintly in the distance. It's time to go back. I am Ari, no longer merely running from the beast. I am Ari, the one who fights back. My return to the village is met with wide-eyed stares and shocked whispers. The sight of me, haggard and mud-streaked, emerging from the direction of the forest, is enough to stop even the most industrious housewife mid-chore. When I reach the center of the village, Magda is there, her crooked frame supported by a gnarled cane. Her piercing eyes fix on me, a strange glint within them. "You lived," she croaks, her voice a mix of accusation and astonishment. "For now," I reply, my voice hoarse. I'm tempted to tell her about the tower, about the symbol, about the miller's book. But something, a gut instinct, honed by a night on the brink of madness, holds me back. This new knowledge, this sliver of hope feels both too precious and too dangerous to share blindly. There's a way to end this, I say instead. My declaration falls heavily into the stunned silence. Magda's lips twitch. "If you say so, boy. But ways have been sought before. Men braver than you, wiser too." "And where did it get us?" The question bursts from me, edged with the frustration of a lifetime lived in fear. I meet her gaze. "It got us a village locked tight at night, families burying loved ones, living under the shadow of a beast." Murmurs spread through the gathering crowd. Looks are exchanged, some questioning, others fearful, a few with a spark of something I can't quite name. But it's Mayor Dorian who speaks, his voice a rumble of practiced authority. "Explain yourself, Ari. Empty claims won't ease the minds of frightened folk." I feel the weight of their eyes, the desperation in their silence. For so long, they've endured. Now, I dangle something so potent yet fragile before them, hope. And within that hope lies the crushing risk of disappointment. "Give me till next moon," I say, keeping my voice steady, letting the desperation that fueled my night at the mill seep into my words. "Gather what I need. I'll face the beast, not as prey, but with a way to break this curse once and for all." The crowd erupts. Fear mixes with outrage, disbelief, and something wilder, untamed. Mayor Dorian bellows for order, but it's a futile gesture. I turn and head towards my home, the book tucked safely, the weight of the villagers' stares hot on my skin. The rest of the day is a blur. I clean myself, ignoring the sting of countless cuts and the ache in every bone. My mother wrings her hands, hovering with a nervous energy that borders on panic. My sister, ever practical, forages for food and sews up the worst rips in my torn clothing. It's only after nightfall, when the house is draped in the familiar, oppressive silence, that I can focus. Unfurling the miller's book, I study the diagrams, the meticulously drawn notes on ingredients, and the archaic rituals described within. There's something both simple and staggeringly complex about the spells within. They speak of balance, of using the very forces of the moon against itself. The tower, the symbol, the ingredients hinted at in the book. They form a pattern. The miller knew how to fight back. And he passed that knowledge down, hoping that one day someone would be desperate enough, brash enough to use it. Tomorrow, I start gathering what I need. Herbs from the forest edge, minerals from the abandoned quarry. Each day will bring its own dangers, each item collected another gamble. But tonight, as I lay my head on my pillow, exhausted yet alight with an unfamiliar, defiant energy, all I can picture is the beast, trapped not by chance, but by my hand. Days blend into a flurry of hushed foraging expeditions and tense, sleepless nights. The villagers watch me with a wary mix of fear and desperate curiosity. They question, they mutter. A few even offer hesitant words of support. But mostly, they wait. And with each passing day, the weight of their unspoken hope bears down on me. The forest offers up some of the ingredients the old book demands, but not without a fight. Thorns tear at my skin. Swampy patches leave me mud-caked and shivering. Once, a wild boar, riled by my intrusion, charges, forcing me to scramble up a tree and wait with heart pounding until it gives up and storms away. The afternoons I spend hunched over the miller's workbench. The book's age has made the pages brittle, so I handle them with painstaking care. I crush dried petals into a paste that stains my fingers a sickly brown, and I boil strange-smelling roots in bubbling water until the air in our small cottage is thick with their acrid fumes. Mayor Dorian visits one evening, his large frame awkward in our cramped living space. He clears his throat, his gaze flicking towards the workbench. "Word travels, Ari. You say you have a solution." "A chance," I correct him carefully. "A chance to fight back, to break the cycle." He nods slowly. "Dangerous words for a dangerous time. The full moon is only a few nights away." His eyes meet mine, and in them I see not just the hardened mare, but the shared grief of a man who has witnessed too much suffering. It cuts through the lingering resentment I felt at his earlier doubts. "That's why I'm doing this," I say. It's simpler than explaining my night at the tower, simpler than revealing the secrets of the miller's book. And yet, it's the most honest thing I've uttered in days. The night before the full moon, I slip out of the village under the cover of darkness. Even the shadows seem less oppressive now, filled with anticipation instead of fear. My pockets are bulging with supplies, the miller's book securely wrapped and tucked into my belt. Each step towards the forest is strangely light, a testament to the stark purpose that fills me. The old tower looms up ahead, a comforting sentinel amidst the trees. The rough climb is familiar now. The cracks in the weathered stone, the gnarled roots, they are like old friends, harsh but strangely reliable. Once on the roof, I unload my supplies. The silver coins clink dully against the stone as I arrange them in a circle, mirroring the symbol that held the beast at bay. Carefully, I follow the miller's instructions. Crushed herbs are sprinkled, pungent concoctions are strategically poured. It's painstaking work, the moon rising higher with each passing minute. And somewhere, beneath the forest canopy, the beast stirs, drawn by the blood-red glow. With a final shaking hand, I light the prepared bundles of sage. They crackle and flare, sending curls of thick smoke that battle the moonlight for dominance. The scent fills the air, a mix of cleansing fire and bitter herbs. My heart thunders in my chest, a counterpoint to the low growl echoing from the tree line. And then it appears. The beast breaks free from the shadows, its eyes fixed upon me. It circles the tower, its hulking form testing the boundaries of its unseen prison. My trap. This time there's no fear, only a cold determination. This time, I'm not the prey. The tower trembles as the beast batters against the invisible barrier I've laid, its snarls turning into full-throated roars. The silver coins clink against the stone under the relentless assault, a discordant symphony to my frantic pulse within. My plan hinges on the creature's rage, its own aggression becoming its downfall. The herbs, the smoke, the chanted spells from the miller's book, they are not mere deterrents. They're designed to provoke, to twist the curse back on itself. Each lunge, each swipe of its massive claws sends a surge of power coursing through the circle. With every roar, the symbols etched on the ancient stones flash with stored energy. I watch the creature with a practiced eye, noting the subtle shift in its movements. There's a confusion in them now, a hesitation, the scent of the herbs and the chanting. They aren't just a source of rage, they are a disruption, a break in the pattern that has sustained it all these long years. With a final, desperate shriek, it rears up, placing its massive forepaws against the barrier. It strains, muscles trembling with exertion. The air crackles with the power coursing around us. This is it. I chant the last of the miller's words, my voice barely a trembling whisper, and strike the flint. Sparks arc, catching on the tinder strategically placed beneath the coins. Flames erupt, bathing the symbols in a hungry light. A collective groan, like the very stones themselves are crying out, rumbles across the tower. The beast whips back, but it's too late. The fire surges outwards, not with heat but with a piercing, icy coldness. It washes over the beast, an ethereal wave of light more than flame. The creature howls, a tortured sound that pierces the night even louder than its roars. But beneath the agony, there's a change. The hulking shape glows, the monstrous form contorting inwards upon itself. The wolfish maw shrinks, the fur receding. Shadows dance around what's left, revealing something smaller, more human. And then, the impossible happens. A man lies huddled on the tower roof. He is naked, eyes wide and filled with a primal terror that's almost more unsettling than the beast's raw fury. I stare down at him, the miller's book hanging uselessly at my side. This, then, is the true source of the curse. Not a demon, not a malevolent spirit, but a man twisted by some old bargain, forever trapped in a limbo between moon cycles. The man staggers to his feet, a shaking, malnourished creature that barely resembles the beast I know. His words come out in a choked rasp. "Please, it burns. The pact, it's broken." Pity wars with revulsion. Generations of villagers terrorized, lives lost, and it all stems from this pitiful figure. Yet I feel something else too, a faint sliver of understanding. This was never a fight between man and monster, but an endless tragedy, fueled by desperation and darkness. "Who are you?" The question spills from me before I can hold it back. He flinches away from me, his eyes wild, the whites bloodshot and startling against his gaunt face. His voice, barely a whisper, rasps out, "Dorian. My name. It's Dorian." The weight of the revelation hits me like a physical blow. Mayor Dorian. Not the stoic, hardened leader, but this terrified shell of a man. This is who the villagers placed their faith in, unknowingly doomed to become their greatest nightmare. "How?" I choke out. He averts his gaze, his naked body trembling either from the cold or some deep, lingering shame. And suddenly, I understand. There's another part of the puzzle. A part the villagers have been willfully blind to, that even the miller's book cannot explain. My voice is sharper now, less sympathetic. "The blood! It wasn't just the pact, was it? Every full moon you drank their blood. Their life force kept you like this, didn't it?" Dorian shudders. He doesn't deny it, and the silence speaks volumes. Disgust churns in my gut, a bitter counterpoint to the pity I'd almost felt. The truth is ugly. The man before me is both victim and perpetrator. The villagers stir at the edge of the forest. They've heard the beast's tortured howls and witnessed the strange light. Fear brought them here, a desperate hope that perhaps, this time, I may have found an answer. "Stay back!" I yell, raising a hand. I don't want them to see this, not yet. Let them savor the knowledge that the beast is gone, at least for now. The truth can wait for daylight, for carefully chosen words. Dorian stares at the approaching crowd. Something I can't name flashes in his eyes. "They'll kill me," he croaks. "They might," I concede. My anger doesn't lessen, but it banks into a cold, pragmatic resolve. I have a duty to the villagers, but there are fragments of a story missing here. A story only Dorian can tell. They won't get that chance, not tonight. Stepping forward, I grab a discarded blanket that I'd brought with me. Draping it around Dorian's shivering form, I gesture towards the treacherous climb down. "Let's go. There's more to be done." Dorian scrambles to his feet, his eyes showing gratitude that does nothing to temper my disgust. I don't offer him aid as he clumsily negotiates the old stones. My concern now is less about his physical well-being and more about ensuring he doesn't escape. My house is the closest shelter. Familiar yet utterly alien, it feels more like a cage than a home. I imprisoned Dorian in a back room, using old farm tools with heavy iron heads to bar the door. My mother and sister huddle in the main room, eyes wide with a mix of terror and awe. The beast! My mother stammers the words, unable to reconcile the monster with the neighbor they've known for years. The beast is gone, I tell them, forcing my voice to remain steady. There's more to the story. Stay here. Don't let anyone in, not until I come back. Ignoring their fearful questions, I step back outside. The air thrummed with the villagers' presence, their hushed whispers and frightened stares. They expect answers, a resolution. I owe them that, but on my own terms. The beast is gone, I announce, my voice ringing through the cool night air. We are safe. For a moment, there is utter silence. Then a ripple of shock, then disbelieving murmurs which quickly swell into a cacophony of shouts and demands. How? Is it truly over? What should we do? I raise my hands, calling for silence. The noise ebbs somewhat, but the fear and confusion remains etched on their faces. I cannot explain everything tonight, I say, choosing each word with deliberate care. There is more to this than any of us understood. But for now, know this. The curse is broken. You are safe to return to your homes, sleep in peace. The relief washes over them. They cling to this small victory, this respite from generations of terror. Tonight they don't need the whole truth with all its ugliness. They need peace. As the villagers slowly dissipate, their voices filled with a weary hopefulness, I turn towards the improvised jail that is my home. There are questions to be asked, a history to unravel. Sleep is unattainable tonight. The room is dimly lit by a single sputtering candle. Dorian sits on a three-legged stool, the blanket clutched tightly around his thin frame. He is a pathetic figure, a stark contrast to the creature that had haunted my nightmares. I take a seat opposite him, weariness etching itself onto my face. Start talking, I command, the harshness in my own voice surprising me. Tell me everything. How the curse began, what your part in it was. His voice is a hoarse rasp, barely audible above the candle's crackling. There was a famine, long ago, before most here were even born. Crops failed, the livestock. They succumbed to a strange sickness. The village was dying. He stops, takes a ragged breath, as if even the memory of those desperate times pains him. I was young then, barely more than a boy, but I was strong, a hunter. I promised them I would find a way to save the village. And you did? The skepticism laces my words. Dorian shudders. I found something. An old shrine deep in the forest, one the villagers barely remembered, dedicated to a forgotten god. It whispered promises, power in exchange for a sacrifice. My stomach clenches. The miller's book, the rituals. They had older roots than I realized. Dark roots. What sacrifice? Blood, Dorian says, then looks away as if ashamed even to utter the word. But not just any blood. The blood of the strong, the healthy, offered under the full moon. I became the beast. He hunches further into himself. The first time it was unbearable. The transformation, the hunger. But with each moon it became easier. A twisted kind of necessity. And in the daylight hours, the villagers, they saw good harvests, healthy children. They forgot the cost. They chose to forget, I counter, a swell of anger rising within me. He nods, a tear tracing a line down his dirty cheek. We all made choices. I took on a monstrous form to protect them. They looked away from the truth to keep what little peace they had. The fire in my gut burns with a cold fury. I will tell them, I say, my voice low but filled with resolve. They deserve to know. Dorian flinches. They will hate me. They will deal with it. This was never your burden to shoulder alone. And as I say it, I realize the truth of my own words. The curse was never just about a beast. It was about choice, consequence, and the darkness that can take root in the hearts of ordinary people when driven by fear. I stand, the shadows playing tricks on my exhausted features. For tonight, rest. There's a reckoning coming in the morning. As I leave, I don't look back at Dorian. There is pity in my heart, yes. But it's a thin, fragile thing under the weight of what he has done and what his silence has allowed. The rest of the night is a blur of tending to my family's worries and formulating a plan to address the shattered remnants of our community. The weight of the coming dawn presses down on me. It will bring truth, fury, perhaps even violence. And under it all, there is still a sliver of hope. Flimsy and newborn, it whispers promises of a village that might, one day, heal. A village, perhaps, that won't need beasts or curses the next time desperation comes knocking. Dawn crept into the village like a reluctant thief, its pale fingers dispelling the last shadows clinging to the edges of the forest. But there was no peace to be had with the rising sun. My words from the night before echoed in the empty streets, a haunting refrain of truth and reckoning. I'd slept little, tossing on my improvised bed, thoughts swirling like angry crows in the pre-dawn twilight. My choices from here on out would shape the village's future just as surely as Dorian's Pact had shaped its past. As the first villagers emerged, blinking in the morning light, I called a gathering in the square. The atmosphere was electric, a mix of cautious hope and simmering tension. They looked to me for answers, and I owed them the whole truth, no matter how bitter it might taste. Dorian stood beside me, small and hunched. He'd refused the offer of borrowed clothes, clinging to the tattered blanket like a shield. Shame had replaced the terror in his eyes, his gaze downcast. Every line etched on his face spoke of a lifetime's crushing burden. My voice rang out, harsh and clear in the morning air. The beast is no more. The curse that plagued us is broken. I let a sliver of the satisfaction I felt show on my face. There was power in finally speaking those words aloud. Then I pointed to Dorian. This is the man who did it. The silence that followed was deafening. It stretched on, charged with disbelief, confusion, and the first sparks of anger. Then, a single voice broke the stillness. Lies! It was old Magda, hunched over her cane, her eyes glinting with fury. He's tricking us, just like the beast did. Her accusation opened the floodgates. Shouts and cries rang out, accusations and demands for proof filling the square. For a chaotic moment, it seemed the village would tear itself apart, fueled by fresh pain and ingrained fear. Silence! I bellowed, raising my hands for quiet. The villagers quieted, but their eyes burned with suspicion and mistrust. Magda is right, I said, my voice steady. I offer no proof but my word. But there is one who can give you more. I turned to Dorian. Tell them! He flinched, yet there was a steeliness in him when he looked up, meeting the glares of his neighbors. His voice, though weak, carried across the square. I am the beast, he said simply. Then he told them everything. The desperation of a starving village, the ancient shrine, the blood pact made under the pale moon. The square filled with shocked silence, broken only by choked sobs and whispered curses. Horror warred with a desperate desire to cling to their newfound safety, their fragile belief in a world without monsters. Mayor Dorian's wife, Martha, stepped forward, her face pale but her spine straight. My husband, she said quietly. He always did what he thought was right, even when it was... She faltered, then finished with, even when it was wrong. The weight of her words, the honesty within them, broke something in the crowd. Their anger bent, not fading, but shifting focus. They turned from Dorian, seeking answers from themselves. Did we know? An old farmer asked, his voice filled with anguish. Deep down, did we always know that this peace was bought with blood? His question hung heavy. The villagers looked at each other, the ugly truth dawning. They had turned a blind eye, whispered rumors while silencing their own doubts. They had allowed the curse to fester, all for the illusion of safety. "It doesn't matter now," I said, stepping forward. "The curse is broken. We don't have to live in fear anymore." But fear was a habit they knew too well. "And what prevents another pact?" Magda challenged, her voice sharp. "What happens when famine comes again, or sickness? Will we sacrifice another for our comfort?" It was a fair question, and the hardest to answer. I took a deep breath, meeting her gaze squarely. "We will do what we've always done," I declared. "We will endure. We will work together, support each other. We don't need dark pacts or monsters to survive. We have ourselves." The words hung heavy in the morning air. It wasn't a promise of easy times ahead. I knew there would be hardship, more deaths. That was the nature of life, the true cost of survival. But it would be a cost they paid with honest sweat, not hidden blood. The sun climbed higher, chasing away the last vestiges of fear-born shadows. Slowly, the rigid set of shoulders relaxed. There was weariness and a deep, lingering shame in their faces. But there was also a hint of resolve that hadn't been there before. No one offered Dorian words of forgiveness, nor did he ask for it. He remained on the edge of the crowd, a shadow of the man he once was. His punishment would be to live with the knowledge of what he'd done, to be a constant reminder of a time they all wanted to forget. Yet there was no talk of exile, no violent retribution. It was a mercy born from exhaustion more than compassion. In the weeks that followed, the village stumbled into a new rhythm. There were hushed arguments and long silences in homes that had once hummed with simple contentment. But there were also tentative smiles, acts of neighborly kindness that felt raw and unfamiliar in their sincerity. The miller's book, the source of so much pain and eventual salvation, was burned on a communal pyre. As the brittle pages turned to ash, it felt like a cleansing. I spent my days gathering supplies for Dorian. A small, isolated hut was built at the forest's edge, far enough from the village for safety, close enough that he wouldn't starve. It was a quiet acknowledgement of their shared history, a stark compromise with their new, uncharted reality. The day I finally walked Dorian to the hut was strained. He accepted the offerings of food and blankets with a jerky nod, his eyes never quite meeting mine. There was a chasm between us, of guilt, of relief, and a reluctant understanding. He was both monster and savior, a tragic figure born not from malice, but from desperation and twisted necessity. "Thank you," he rasped out as I turned to leave. It wasn't an absolution, just an acknowledgement of one human to another. I nodded, not trusting my voice to reply. As I walked away, leading the horse laden with his meager possessions, I didn't look back. There was no triumph in this ending, nor was there true closure, just the burden of hard-won knowledge, and the stubborn belief that the worst beast a village can face is the one it hides within itself. The years that followed weren't easy, but they were real, unburdened by the weight of dark secrets and nightly terror. There was a new scar on the village's history, one they didn't try to erase or ignore. It became caution, a wariness not of the forest's moonlit shadows, but of the darkness that can take root in the hearts of ordinary men when the alternative seems far too monstrous to bear.